Take on. We'll make her one of us. A loving cup, a loving cup.
We accept her one of us. We accept her one of us.
Gooba gobble, gooba gobble.
We accept her, we accept her.
Google gobble, google gobble.
One of us. One of us.
Google gobble.
It was during the 16th century when people with deformities began being treated as objects of interest and entertainment rather than with shame and disgrace, and thus was the birth of freak shows. The popularity of freak shows peaked in the early 20th century, and the shows began popping up in circuses, dime museums, and amusement parks. While some people exhibited at these shows were paid the equivalent of what athletes make today, others were often taken advantage of and never saw a penny of what they made. While you are watching this video, all we ask is that you put yourself in their shoes. Try to imagine being attached to your sibling for your entire life, or carrying the weight of half a person that's sticking out of you. Imagine being 8 years old and 6 feet tall. Wonder how you could deal with your chin permanently resting against your chest. Please understand that these people didn't just have to function with their deformities, they had to live.
On February 5th, 1908, conjoined twins Daisy and Violet Hilton were born in Brighton, England. Their mother, Kate Skinner, was employed at a bar by a woman named Mary Hilton, who helped with the twins' childbirth. Hilton ended up buying them from their birth mother, her intent being to use the girls for fortune out of a career in entertainment. With Mary, they were kept under strict control and were subjected to physical abuse while being trained to sing and dance. In 1911, at the age of 3, the girls were taken on their first tour of Germany as a sideshow act called the United Twins.
Identical twins are created when one fertilized egg splits into 2 genetically identical embryos. If the splitting process stops before it is complete, then the partially separated egg develops into a conjoined fetus, and the twins exit the womb fused together. Daisy and Violet were fused at the hips. They shared blood circulation but no major organs. Separation became a possibility later in their lives, but they declined.
Their act was continued in 1916 with a tour of the U.S., and in 1926 they were involved in a tap dancing act with American comedian and vaudevillian Bob Hope. Mary Hilton kept the entirety of their earnings for herself. After Hilton died, the twins were taken under the care of Mary's daughter, Edith, who took over the twins' career, teaching them to play saxophone and violin, and like her mother, beat them if they were disobedient. In 1931, Daisy and Violet sued Edith, gaining independence in their career, and moved on to perform their own vaudeville act, the Hilton Sisters Revue. They also went on to perform in burlesque acts, and in 1932 they made an appearance in one of the most significant films in history, Freaks, directed by Todd Browning.
The diamond stars above you.
Eventually, the twins' vaudeville and burlesque acts lost popularity, and after Freaks, Daisy and Violet found it difficult to make a living. In 1933, Violet fell in love with a musician named Maurice Lambert. She and Maurice applied for a marriage license in 14 states, but they were refused in each one due to the twins' conjoinment. In 1951, using the rest of their money, the sisters released an exploitation film titled Chained for Life, for which they made appearance at theaters. Tragically, in 1961, at their final appearance in North Carolina, their manager abandoned them, and with nowhere to go, they were forced to take up a job at a nearby grocery store to survive. They continued to work there until 1969, when after they failed to show up to work one morning, they were found dead in their home, their body lying by their heating vent in an attempt to keep warm. They had been ill with the Hong Kong flu, and it was declared that Daisy died first, and Violet died within 2 to 4 days later.
Why don't I try to fly? You're my love thief. I love you till I die.
Twins can be conjoined in several different places. Most are connected by the chest, but some are connected by the pelvis, abdomen, and even the cranium. They can also be asymmetrically attached, and these are known as parasitic twins. Parasitic twins are formed the same way conjoined twins are. However, during the pregnancy, one of the twins will stop growing, leaving it dependent on the fully formed twin for survival. This leads to the question of whether or not the dependent twin should be classified as a person or as a mutation of the dominant twin. The earliest known example of parasitic twins were Lazarus and Juan Baptista Colorado.
Lazarus and Juan Baptista Colorado were Italian parasitic conjoined twins who toured as a sideshow act across Europe during the 17th century. Juan Baptista's upper body and left leg emerged from his brother Lazarus's abdomen. Lazarus was a mobile and functional human being who was described as a charming, handsome man who was married and fathered several children. His brother Juan Baptista, on the other hand, never spoke and always kept his eyes closed and his mouth open. He only moved his ears, hands, and lips if he pressed on Lazarus's breast, and besides for exhibition at circus shows for money, Juan Baptista was always kept hidden underneath a cloak. Robert Waldo of Alton, Illinois was known as the tallest person in recorded history. He was born February 22, 1918, to Addie Johnson and Harold Waldo, and was the oldest of 5 siblings, who never showed any signs of an abnormally high human growth hormone as Robert, who was 5'3" by the age of 4, and taller than his father by the age of 8. At 9 years old, he weighed 180 pounds and was strong enough to carry his father sitting in a chair up the stairs. Throughout school, Waldo had to use a special desk to fit his size. By the age of 13, he was the same height as Andre the Giant, 7'4".
Giantism is when a tumor presses against the pituitary gland, the part of your brain responsible for height, and causes the gland to secrete copious amounts of the human growth hormone. Most abnormally tall people's height is caused by giantism, but not Robert Waldo. His problem was his pituitary gland was overactive and kept secreting the growth hormone, which caused him to keep growing up until his death.
Waldo graduated from Alton High School in 1936 and went on to Shirtliff College to study law, but found it difficult to travel from class to class. His health started becoming a problem for him. He had little feeling in his legs and feet and was forced to walk with braces, and ultimately his condition forced him to drop out of college. He did achieve celebrity status with the 1936 U.S. tour with the Ringling Brothers Circus, and in 1938 he became the face of the International Shoe Company's promotional tour. Tragically, in 1940, one of his ankle braces that helped him walk was not fit properly, resulting in a badly infected blister. It was only noticed when Robert began developing a high fever. A blood transfusion and emergency surgery was performed, but only made the infection worse. Robert Waldo died in his sleep on July 15, 1940, at the young age of 22. At the time of his death, he was still growing, standing at almost 9 feet tall when he died. Leonard Trask was born June 30, 1805, in Hartford, Maine. His life wasn't unusual up until 1833 when he was riding his horse and it suddenly got frightened and threw him off. He landed on his neck and shoulders, and it took several days for him to crawl back home. Despite the pain, he continued to work, and subsequently his spine began to bow and curve, which caused him to become a medical curiosity. Many doctors attempted to find a cure for his deformity, but none were successful. His spine injury became worse when in 1848 he fell into a load of hay, and in 1853 he was thrown from his wagon, this time breaking his collarbone and 4 ribs. If this wasn't bad enough already, in 1858 he was thrown from a covered wagon, and his head made impact with an iron projection on the coach door, which made a 5-inch long gash in his scalp, penetrating the skull. He began having trouble breathing, and eventually he couldn't walk. He was told he wouldn't live until the next morning, but despite this he ended up miraculously recovering. Knowing his deformities would greatly interest the medical world and general public, he decided to try to earn a profit off of his disability to help support his wife and 7 children. He wrote and published many documents about his life with the burden of an accidental deformity and medical phenomenon, including a brief historical sketch of the life and sufferings of Leonard Trask, the Wonderful Invalid, which was released in 1860. He died a year later on April 13th at the age of 56. Joseph Cary Merrick was born August 5, 1862 in Leicester, England to Joseph Rockley and Mary Jane Merrick. He was born healthy and didn't show signs of any deformity until the age of 5, when his skin became lumpy and gray, and his lips swelled up. Eventually a bony growth projected from his forehead, and one of his arms was significantly larger than the other. His feet were abnormally large, and his skin became rough and loose in places. His left arm became permanently lame. After his mother died, Joseph moved in to live with his stepmother. He dropped out of school at the age of 13 and was forced to find work at a factory rolling cigars. but eventually he lost his dexterity due to his disabilities and could no longer work. He was starved and left for the streets because no one would take him in, not even his own family, as he was a financial burden and he drew too much negative attention. At the age of 17, he ended up at the Leicester Workforce Union, where he only stayed for a few years before he departed with a few traveling showmen to be exhibited as the Elephant Man. Merrick's display became very popular and attracted a lot of attention, eventually catching the eye of a surgeon named Frederick Treves. Treves was greatly intrigued by Merrick and began extensive examinations to find out more about his client's situation. These are the pictures that Treves took.
In 2012, scientists Ruth Epstein and John Rubin closely examined Joseph Merrick's skeleton and gathered enough data to recreate his voice. What you are about to hear is a recreation of Merrick's voice reading his favorite poem, False Greatness by Isaac Watts.
My home is something odd. That's blaming me is blaming God. Could I create myself anew, I would not have imprisoned you. If I could get some coal to fall, or glass the ocean with sand, I would be measured by the soul, the mind's the standard of the man.
On the night of April 11, 1890, Joseph Merrick passed away in his sleep. Autopsy reports showed that he had suffered asphyxia from a dislocated neck. Due to his disfigurement, Merrick had been forced to sleep upright every single night for his whole life in order to hold the weight of his head. Treves believed that the night of his death, Merrick had slept lying down in an earnest attempt to be like other people. A devastating decision that ultimately ended his life at the young age of 27.
People like to think that the idea of exposing people with physical deformities for profit and amusement is a thing of the past. Those people are wrong. Our curiosity of people that are different than we are will never cease, and as times change, the medium in which we view these people change as well. What we must remember is that these people are human, and must be treated with the same respect that we treat one another. Put yourself in their shoes. Try to imagine how Violet felt when she had to live with Daisy's corpse still attached to her hip. Or Lazarus when he had to go his whole life with his brother protruding from his belly. Or Robert when he entered kindergarten at 5 feet and 6 inches tall. Or Leonard when his eyes bled from straining so hard to look forward. Or Joseph Merrick, whose physical appearance made people scream in horror at the sight of him. Imagine how you would function. Imagine how you would live.